Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I'm your co-host Pablo, and here's my co-host.
Leo.
So, on today's episode, we are going to discuss start/sits for Week 3 of this fantasy football season. Been a wild one so far. Hopefully, all of y'all are doing good. For any 0-2 starters, it's still early, so I wouldn't get too discouraged. So let's dive right in and start with quarterbacks. So gonna ride the hype train just like I was with Sam Darnold last year with the Vikings, and this year's hype train so far is Daniel Jones. So he is gonna be my start for QBs. He's currently QB4 overall in ESPN leagues. So until he proves otherwise, I think his managers are really happy. He does go up against the 0-2 Titans division opponent, but I don't see him, having too much of a hard time, all things considered. So he is the quarterback that I would start. What about you, Leo?
So my number one quarterback to start this week is gonna be Dak Prescott. Uh, he after kind of crapping on himself on week one, he came alive in week two and had 26 points against the fantasy points against the Giants. And this week, he's gonna go up against the Bears, who last week allowed Jared Goff to score over 40 fantasy points last week. And the Bears are allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, so I definitely see Dak Prescott continuing that and having a rock solid game for fantasy managers. In that same game, if you have Caleb Williams, I'd also start him too because the Cowboys are allowing the fourth most fantasy points. So this definitely looks like a possible shootout. If you have them both, I'll start them both up for sure.
Yeah, that last week's game for the Cowboys and Giants was a shootout, which kind of goes, good into the segue of who I'm gonna sit at QB. Russell Wilson managers, I would not expect him to do the same thing that he did against the Cowboys this week against the Chiefs. I do not see the Chiefs starting 0-3. I see that defense clamping down. So I don't believe it's going to be as big of a shootout. So I would sit Russell Wilson this week against the Chiefs. Even though, again, he did really well against the Cowboys, I just don't see the Chiefs starting 0-3. I don't think they've started 0-3 with Mahomes or Reed at the helm. So, history's not in the Giants' favor. Who are you going to sit?
Well, the obviously set of the week, I think, has got to be Tua Tagovailoa. He's going up against the Bills, but let's go a little bit deeper. I'm gonna go another quarterback to sit this week is Geno Smith. Last week, on Monday night in the second bill of the doubleheader, he threw three interceptions, fell apart against the Chargers. This week, he goes up against the Commanders up on and traveling to going east away. So the Commanders have only given up 400 only 230 yards a game, and so far, and I think he's gonna have a little bit of an issue scoring this week. I think definitely Gino will have under 20 fantasy points, and so if you have him, I would try to look for another option if you can.
Yeah, I saw a couple of memes from Raiders fans that they stayed up really late, to watch that debacle on Monday night. Now, moving on to running backs. So he's kind of been the hot topic as far as running backs so far this week because he now is going to be the starter for the Vikings with Aaron Jones going down. Me and Leo were kind of talking about that before the season started. That Aaron Jones deals with injuries. I didn't expect it to be so early in the season, and now the Vikings had to put Aaron Jones on IR, which means minimum 4 games he will miss. So that for Jordan Mason managers like myself, kind of excited to see what he does, and he's going to be my start for running backs. Not only because he's finally going to get the boatload of the carries, but the opponent they face is the Bengals, and the first 3 weeks they've done pretty well against the run, but they've been not doing so well stopping running backs from being involved in the passing game. Uh, Dylan Sampson had 8 receptions, touchdown. Tootin from the Jacksonville had some receptions as well. So interesting to see if Mason will kind of have the same value as far as being involved in the passing game if the Bengals can't stop him from getting involved as far as catching the ball. So that is why he is my start as a running back. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's a good pick, definitely, because like you said, he's going to have the majority of the carries. And yeah, the Bengals are allowing the second most fantasy points to running backs. So yeah, he should be in for a very nice game. My start of the week at running back, I'm going to go with Travis Etienne. So far he's racked up 245 yards from scrimmage. Kind of like we mentioned already last week. He and you mentioned as well. He had a good game last week with the against the Bengals, and this week they're going to go up against your favorite team, the Houston Texans, who are allowing the 9th most fantasy points to running backs. He should be able to definitely, easily get double-digit points. I will say close to like 15 fantasy points in PPR leagues. That last week they allowed so far the Texans running backs have allowed 3 running backs to score at least 13.9 PPR fantasy points. So that should continue this week. So if you have Etienne, start him up with confidence for sure.
Yeah, Bucky Irvin, had a really good game Monday night against Texans. Kind of like you said, ETN's probably going to be in that same boat. Even though the Texans, showed some flashes, got some stops, but it didn't matter as far as the whole game is concerned because Bucky was really involved in the offense. So I see that being the same thing for ETN. Now, my running back to sit is in that same game. It's going to be Nick Chubb. So even though he did finally get his first touchdown Monday night, the rookie Marks really showed some good flashes, especially being involved in the passing game. So I think that's going to lead to more opportunities for Marks. So for that reason, I would sit Chubb just because I feel like that rookie is going to eat up some of the touches for Chubb. And besides the touchdown last week, he hasn't, had an explosion as of yet. So for those reasons, I would sit Chubb. What about you?
The running back I'm going to sit, and I actually have him in a couple of leagues. So he's going to hit the pine this week is a Tyrone Tracy. Lately, Cam Scatterbu has been building up his carries for touches for the as the weeks have gone by, and that's last week against Dallas Tyrone Tracy he had 5 rushes for 15 yards and 4 receptions for 36 yards. He just had just under 10 points, and Cam Scatterbu had more than that. So he is facing going up against Kansas City, which allows the 27th most fantasy points. So they're really tough against the run. And so I see Tracy starting to fade. If you have him, maybe if he happens to have a good game, try to trade him or whatever. Because I don't think he's going to be much startable going forward. So you might want to try to trade him and see if you can find a sucker out there. If not, then let him ride the pine and see what happens for this week.
Yeah, I was reading a report that supposedly he's going to be less involved in the offense
Yeah.
moving forward. So Totally understand for Tracy managers. I'm on the opposite end because I have Steve, so kind of see how he does. Now moving on to receivers. I'm gonna continue to pick on my home team as far as the secondary until they prove me otherwise. But I think, especially for BTJ managers, I think this is finally when he has a breakout game. Monday night, if you saw the game, the Bucks passing game with Baker, um, they pretty much did it all night. They got different receivers involved. Um, and I think, for BCJ managers, you're kind of hoping for that same result. People were drafting him, pretty high, me being along with those other managers. And I think that if he doesn't do well, then he might be on the trading block here pretty soon. And again, against Baker Mayfield, he got um, all his weapons involved: Evans, Buka, Bucky in the passing game, even a tight end who I'm pretty sure not a lot of owners had. Um, so, I see Trevor Lawrence kind of doing the same thing to the Texans secondary, which is why I would start BTJ. What about you?
Well, I hope you're right, man, because I have BTJ in a couple of leagues. I need him to actually show up this year for once, because he's pissing me off. Anyways, my start this week at receiver, I'm gonna go back to that Dallas Bears game, but I'm gonna go on the other side. I'm gonna go with Rome Odunze. Last week he blew up for 7 receptions, 128 yards, and two touchdowns on 11 targets. So he's becoming. Looks like he's finally taking over and becoming Caleb Williams' go-to guy. They're this week. They're like I said, they're going up against the Cowboys, who allow the third most fantasy points to receivers, and so he's been coming along so far, and I think that's going to continue this week against the Cowboys for sure.
Yeah, really, really wish I would have drafted a Dunze in at least one league, but was not able to. Um, Feel bad for DJ Moore owners because sure people drafted DJ first over Odunze. And yeah, he looks like finally gonna have that breakout year from the looks of it. Like you said, um, last week, Cowboy secondary got burned by Giants receivers, so that should continue like this week. Now, my sit as far as wide receiver, he had a good first game, but since then, he's kind of cooled off. And I'm gonna sit Garrett Wilson this week, even though I have him in one of my leagues. But he has no Justin Fields. Justin Fields gonna be out with a concussion, so I think it's definitely gonna affect his fantasy value this week. They're going into Tampa, so we know how weather can be over there, humidity and everything. So I definitely would sit Garrett Wilson this week. What about you?
This week I'm actually gonna go with who's been one of the most pleasant surprises this year at receiver, and that's Quentin Johnston. Over his first two games, he scored over 20 fantasy points, and then in the second game had about almost 16 fantasy points, which has been very impressive for him. Um, the thing is that this week he's going up against Denver, and which is 29th against receivers. And that means that you might have a lot of Patrick Surtain in his in his future, which he usually locks down outside receivers. So I think Keenan Allen has a better chance of performing there because he's more of the slot guy. But Johnson, since he's outside, I think that he's gonna have I think he might have some issues there. So if you have him, you might want to let him sit this week because next week he's got a juicy matchup against the Giants. So, but yeah, I will sit him this week for sure though.
All right, and then moving on to tight ends, another hype train that I'm gonna, board is Juwan Johnson. He's currently number 2 tight end, according to ESPN. And last week, I think Spencer Rattler threw for 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. They go up against the Seahawks, who had a really good game against Pittsburgh. But as far as whatever offense the Saints might cook up, Juwan Johnson's been proving that he's going to be heavily involved. So for those reasons, I'm going to stay on that train. What about you?
All right. So I'm gonna go with actually the Cleveland tight end combo of both Harold Fan and also Njoku. Njoku's kind of been little tight this year, but they're going up against Green Bay that allow the fifth most fantasy points to tight ends. They do have a good defense, but they can stop the run. But I think they have I think he has potential this week to come through. Another tight end that I like is Zach Ertz. He's there's reports that Jaden Daniels might not play this week. It's gonna we'll see if that how that goes. Still waiting word until tomorrow, Friday. But if he's if you do have Hurts and someone uh, Mariota might be the starter. He's gonna have to rely. I don't think he has the game to throw downfield, but he's definitely gonna have to rely on Zach Ertz to get him through it. Safety valve. So if you have Ertz, he had a very excellent game last week that he scored 18 fantasy points with 6 receptions on 8 targets and with 64 yards and a touchdown. So if you have Zach Ertz, you can fire him up too, along with those Cleveland Browns tight ends.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. A lot of the news this week was, all the QBs going down. Jaden was one of them. So definitely going to be interesting to see if he plays or not. Now, my sit as far as tight ends can probably be shocking, especially because of what he did last week. But I'm more of the saying, or that famous saying that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. So I would sit Tucker Kraft this week. I don't see him duplicating that same result. If you had him and didn't start him, and then now you're gonna start him because of what he did. I think especially the tight end position, probably one of the harder ones to kind of see who's gonna be good week in, week out. Example A, Juwan Johnson. Nobody drafted him, and yet he's the number 2 tight end. So I would sit Tucker Kraft this week. What about you?
Yeah, my tight end to sit this week that I really thought he was gonna have a chance. That he went to I think a very good opportunity, but he's been MIA, and that's gonna be Evan Ingram. He's been he hasn't practiced last week. I think today he was a little bit limited, and he's so he's very limited what he's done, and he's very off to a slow start. He only has 4 catches for 33 yards and no touchdowns and 6 targets. So in 2 games already. So that's pretty pathetic for Ingram, that he's been one of the better tight ends in the last couple of years, especially last year when he was with Jacksonville. So this week, he's going up against the Chargers that they're mid pack of how they defend the tight end, but they do have a lot of good linebackers and excellent safeties that can probably hang with Ingram. And so I if you have him, I will definitely sit him and start someone else.
All right, and moving on to the last position is going to be defenses. So this week, the defense that I would start is going to be the Bucks defense. No Justin Fields, so you have Tyrod Taylor behind center. Breece Hall has been underwhelming. And again, I think Tyrod behind center really affects Garrett. So I don't really know what kind of offense production they're going to have. And again, they're going to be in Tampa. So I know last time that I was seeing the weather, there was a lot of potential rainy matchups this weekend. So if Tampa's one of them, it can be really difficult for the Jets. So for those reasons, I would start the Bucks. What about you?
The start of the week for me on defense is I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I kind of like we mentioned earlier, Russell Wilson had an amazing game last week that threw for 450, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. But like we all think, there's no chance he's going to do that again. He might be out, not have his left tackle again, Andrew Thomas. So if that's the case, the Chiefs have a good chance to put some pressure on him, and so they have a chance to make his life difficult for the day. So I'm gonna go with the Chiefs defense on Sunday Night Football.
I agree, man. Sunday night, prime time. I think the Chiefs are much more used to the spotlight than Russell Wilson is. So I think the defense should do well. Now, as far as the defense to sit for me, has been very surprising. Roster percentage wise, they were probably like at 99% or 95 to 100% when the season started. And it's been going down every week. And I'm talking about the Steelers. The Steelers defense has been getting scored on, which is unusual for them. With TJ Watt being, if not the highest paid, one of the highest paid defensive players. And just, Steelers have always been known for their defense, but they gave up, 30 plus points to the Jets, 30 plus points to the Seahawks. So for those reasons, from a fantasy perspective, you can't trust them until they start stopping someone. And they're going up against the Patriots in New England. Drake May had a really good game last week. So I think he continues to do that, especially again since 30 plus points first 2 weeks against the Steelers defense. So I would definitely sit them. What about you?
This defense I'm gonna sit that they've actually been pretty impressive. I would think for the first couple of games. First week they had scored 11 fantasy points, and last week they had 8, which is very respectable for a defense. And that's the Rams defense. Week one they held last week they held the Titans to 19, and week one, as you know, they held Houston to 9 points.
Yep.
But this week they're going up against Philly, which they've been we know that they've been very impressive, and they haven't really got their passing game going yet. So which surprisingly they have no turnovers, and they've only allowed 3 sacks. So definitely, if you have the Rams, I would pick up someone else because they ain't gonna score too many points this week.
Right. So before we wrap things up, kind of just want to pick your brain, since we have some time with all the quarterback injuries. Do you think, any top candidates? So like me, I lost Burrow. I kind of was forced to pick up Browning. But do you think that they'll sign anyone? I'm kind of hoping that Jameis Winston gets signed by the Bengals because he at least, airs the ball out. And Browning, he didn't do terrible, but he still had 3 interceptions. So I don't think the Bengals want that.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. If Winston would get traded there, like you say, he is a gunslinger, and I could see him going off every week, but if you look back when Browning took over for Burrow the last time he was injured a couple years ago, he did fairly well. He was hovering around 20 fantasy points. The thing is, well, I think Jamar Chase is still going to be very highly used, and you should start him. The receiver that I have, like, I don't think he's going to do too well going forward. Might be T Higgins, unfortunately. I don't know if Browning has the that kind of game to help multiple receivers do well.
Yeah, to kind of go through his
Yeah,
progressions and everything. Nah, he's
right.
gonna be like if Chase
Yeah,
is there and is open, I'm
yeah,
gonna look for him all the time.
right. So that's the thing.
Um,
But
I
yeah,
just
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I just hope Chase Brown becomes more used, like to kind of take some pressure off. So me owning Chase Brown, I kind of hope that kind of helps him in his favor, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think he's still gonna be good, like I said. But I just think T Higgins is gonna have a not that good of a year. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think Browning's okay. Like unless you're like in a 2 quarterback league or super flex, probably won't start too much until he's got to prove it to
That
us.
was yeah.
But yeah, but yeah,
That was me. Had to.
yeah,
But yeah. All right. Again, just want to kind of talk about that real quick. So please, give us a follow, share the pod. Thanks everyone for listening. As far as our numbers, they've kind of been going up now that the season started. So really appreciate that to all of our listeners. But again, can use your help to get more. If you have any questions, you can reach me on X. That would be at ArchReaper, ARCHREAPR. Leo, where can they reach you?
yeah. If you got any fantasy questions, dynasty questions, start sit questions, you can reach me at Smooth1074 on X as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace.